Hey, how's it going? Recently I worked on this Helix and I wanted to share kind of what I've done. I got this thing maybe a month ago and built it the way it's supposed to be with the flight controller PDB, the F3 board that it comes with. I raced with it only one time and it flew phenomenal. I mean, it's really a game changer for racing. I'm not a huge racer. I mostly fly freestyle, but um, flying in races with an alien, now I can see why the racers use quads like this. I mean, it's just night and day as far as racing goes. But what I didn't like with the Impulse RC FC PDB that's supposed to go with this, it didn't have a current sensor, which I wasn't aware of until I was trying to figure out how to get the mAh readout, and it wasn't reading right. It was giving me information, but it wasn't correct. And then later I learned that the flight controller just doesn't have a current sensor on it. I'm sure there are people out there that know how to get one added on and make all that fine and dandy, which is great. But for me, that's a big deal, not having a current sensor, because I land all my batteries at a certain rating at like 900, 910 mAh, and that way when I parallel charge, I just plug them all in and boom, I'm done. I can walk away from it for a bit. Every time I flew this thing, I had to take each battery and charge them individually, which is kind of a pain in the ass. So that, and since I've started flying quads, I've always flown with KISS, so I'm used to it, and I like it. It was a bit of a learning curve with Betaflight, although it still flew nice, and I liked it. But what I've done with this is I have converted this 5-inch Helix to a full KISS setup. And I don't know if you can see here, what I had to do was add a 10mm standoff along with a 3mm nylon screw, just I needed a little more distance from the bottom because these wires coming in are pretty close. But everything else came with the Helix. Like these are, I'm not sure the size of these posts, but these are what came with it. So now I have the Wolf PDB that just came out, which is awesome. It's very similar to the Mr. Seal PDB, which I use on both of my aliens. Except it's got a hell of a lot more features and it's more user-friendly. I mean, it's super cool. Now I got my current sensor, obviously. I can put GPS and all that, although I'll never do that to this quad. I haven't flown it yet, but I have the KISS V2 flight controller, and I've also got the KISS 32 amp ESCs in these fairings, which these fairings were 3D printed, because the fairings that come out standard with this Helix are probably about a 1/4 inch smaller in height this way, so they wouldn't obviously fit these the ESCs I wanted to put in here. I was running the F35, I think is what it is, the T-motor ESCs, and they were great, but the whole thing with going to a BL Heli suites and setting those ESCs up, flashing them, doing all that, and then going into Betaflight, and just the whole process was a little bit, it wasn't that difficult. Again, it was a learning curve for me, but I just find that KISS is just easier. You can you're just plugging in your flight controller, you're setting it up, you plug in yes, you gotta plug in the PDB and set that up, but you do that once and then you're good. And anyways, I wanted to set this thing up with KISS, and I've done that, and I'm excited about it. These motors are, my buddy John hooked me up with these motors. These are the Mars DYS 2400 race series motors, which again I haven't flown this yet, so we'll see how it does. I'm sure they'll be phenomenal. He rebuilt and put new bearings, new bells, so I'm stoked to try them out. I did have F80s on here, 2500 kV, when I was racing this, when it was all stock stuff. And it was awesome, but it was a bit of a battery killer at the same time. So anyways, I've swapped the motors out. So along with this video, I've put together the before and after photos. As I was going through the build process, it's kind of hard to see what's going on in here, but I am running Crossfire, as you can see. I did take out the, this thing comes with its own VTX, and I think it worked pretty good. The whole setup as it comes is a great package. It's really strong and sturdy. I like the idea of having the Unify, so I can do Lewis script and change my channel, all that stuff. Yeah, you can do it in the OSD when you have the one that came with it, the VTX that came with it. But it's like old school, you got to go right in the goggles. You got to go right, left. It takes a little bit of time. The Lewis script is pretty sweet, it makes things easier. And this is a better video transmitter by far. I mean, it really is. I've got them on all my other quads, and so I swapped that out. The camera is nothing special. It's a Monster V2 Mini, 16 by 9, because that's what my goggles are. Trying to think of what else. I guess that's it. There's not much. Okay, so now I have done my first flight with this. I'm not going to shove it in the camera, but this is the Helix that I converted over to KISS fully. The 32 amp ESCs and KISS FC V2. It's flying phenomenal. I am very excited about it. It's just currently on default PIDs, and it's amazing. It's as smooth as my Aliens, although those are tuned pretty damn well, so those are locked in. I haven't tuned this. I'm going to be working on that. But just basically on the default PIDs, it was so smooth, and it's awesome. The only issues that I wouldn't call them issues, I think it's me more than the actual hardware. The RSSI, for some reason, when it sets it up automatically, everything's automatic on this PDB, which is super cool. But so I'm running Crossfire. I go to the menu, I put it on Crossfire equals LQ, and and then you just pick the auxiliary switch that you have your RSSI set up on, which mine is auxiliary 1. And for some reason, it's reading 100% all the time. So there's something there. that's probably me. I gotta obviously just check on and see what's going on, but that's not working as of right now. The other thing is that I noticed was the mall readout, which was the whole reason why I wanted to do this switch anyways, was because I wasn't getting any mall readout when it was the F3 Betaflight Helix PDB FC board they came with. It would give me the voltage and stuff, but it wouldn't give me any mall readout, which I use again to land at a certain, like 900 or 1200 or whatever it is, that depending on the battery I'm using, so that when I parallel charge they're all the same. That was the whole reason I did the switch. One of the main reasons. The other is that I'm super familiar with KISS and not so much Betaflight, but anyways, that mall readout from my Tyrannus to the OSD seems to be off by like 10 mAh. So on my Tyrannus it would say 900, and on the OSD it would read out as 930 mAh, 930 mAh. So or 910 mAh. Sorry. So that seems to me like, I don't know. There's an option in there where you can, when you go into the battery, you can set up the option for the current sensor to be auto, or straight current sensor, or ESC. And I'm not familiar enough with it to know which one I should be using. So by default, it comes on. It comes as set up on auto, so that's where it is now. I did try it on where it said just current sensor, and then I tried it as where it just gave me the option to use the ESC. Each one was each one was a little different. It gave the mall readout a little bit different. So I'm going to test it to see which of the three options, the auto, the current sensor, or the ESC, for the mall readout is most accurate. But as of right now, it's, like I said, about 10-15 mAh off from what my Tyrannus says. Now on my Steel PDB, whatever my Tyrannus says, it says 930 mAh. That's in my OSD, 930 mAh. It's exactly the same, which would be nice if that would happen. So I'm sure I need to play around with it a little bit to get that to happen. But other than that, this thing is awesome. It was awesome before, but the fact that now I'm on KISS with this, that I'm familiar with, I love the feel of this. It actually in my opinion, it flies better. It feels smoother. It really does. Something that was happening with the Betaflight. Now again, I'm not very familiar with Betaflight. Could have been the way I set up the BL Heli suites. I don't know. But when I would punch out and then kill the throttle to 0, when I'm talking about the F3 board that's supposed to be in this Helix, I would kill the throttle, and it's in air mode, so it should hold its position. But what would happen is it would kind of dive off to one side as if it was coming out of air mode and just gonna fall out of the sky. However, the second I moved my sticks, it would do that, so it was like, if I don't go 0 throttle, it wouldn't do it. But when I went to 0 throttle on a punch out to flip over, it would have that, like it was falling out of the sky. Now again, it could have been a setting on my part, but that's another reason why I switched back to this to KISS. So I've been doing a lot of rambling here, but I just wanted others out there who are really who are flying KISS and like it and are thinking about racing, and you like the idea of, this is a super awesome racing quad. I mean, it's a perfect X, and everything is right in the center, perfectly balanced, super fast and agile. So yeah, if you want to give it a go, the only thing you're going to be doing is, I used the original screws that came with it. They had press nuts here, or where that screw is. There was a press nut on all four sides. So the screw that's going down was the screw that was originally coming up from the bottom and screwing into the press nut. I flipped it around, and now it's screwing down into this 10 millimeter standoff. So it's coming down like this into this nylon nut, and also into this 10mm standoff. I then took I think it's about a 7 or an 8, maybe a 6mm, it's a 3M screw, but I'm not sure the length. I'll put it in the link down below. Now I'm coming up with that one. Also, this screw here is coming up into the 10mm standoff. So it's kind of like they're both screws are coming like this, versus one screw going through everything and going into a press nut. So it's still rigid as can be, but that's all I've done in order to get the height, to give it enough room to get the FC in there, and give it enough room for the wires coming off the Wolf PDB. So yeah, that's all I've done, and it's a super simple setup and extremely fast and agile. Awesome. All right, I'm not talking anymore.